And we are live for another episode of First Strike. Before we start the show, I gotta plug our sponsor, FaceToFaceGames.com, the #1 place to get your Magic the Gathering singles. Right now, we've got a promotion up to 40% off high-end cards. So these are basically really expensive cards. We're talking about Black Lotus. We're talking about a lot of dual lands. Some of them are 40% off. So if you've been saving up or looking to buy some of the most expensive cards we have in the game, go check it out. Go to FaceToFaceGames.com, click on the front banner, and you'll be able to see all the cards and all the regular prices and all the savings that you can get. And again, join the Facebook page, like it. There's always a weekly contest where we give away $50 store credit. And again, gotta stress enough, we've had repeat winners already, and that's how easy it is to win. And then you can use that $50 to buy whatever the weekly special is. So enjoy. And if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/firststrike. Really appreciate it. And we had an exciting weekend that just passed. A lot of exciting stuff, some sad. My friend BDM, Brian David Marshall, has moved on to other endeavors. We don't know when he'll be back. But sad that we won't be able to see him as a mainstay on the Mythic Championship. He's someone, like, everyone's been writing how they've touched him, they've been touched by him. But for me, it was like, if you go to manadeprived.com, all the way to like the very first page of content, he was the first interview I ever did. And it just goes to show how he treated everyone. Like, I was nobody at the time. I still am now, but at the time, like, no one knew who I was, and he was willing to take some time to do an interview at a pre-release with someone, you know, for his little blog. So he gave everyone time, so I really appreciate him. And I don't know about you guys. Well, we got Andy, Derek, Elliot in the house. I don't know if he meant anything to you guys, but for me, he meant a lot. And just someone that's always been friendly with me. Of course, he decided willing to host Top 8 podcasts on manadeprived.com. That's on magic.facetofacegames.com with Mike Flores. So I've been friends with those two, but I've just seen him be so kind to every player. And he did some excellent interviewing this past weekend and couldn't, I'm going to miss that guy.
Yeah, he was obviously, like, very important for Magic. And if you watch the Enter the Battlefield with him, it sounds like he was, like, very important for, like, being, like, the underground tournament organizer who, like, started it all, sort of. So it sounds like he's one of the most important people to ever happen to Magic.
I had an interview with him once. I don't know how many people have seen this, but at the end of round 7 of Pro Tour Amonkhet, which was my first PT, he, like, pulled me aside and saw that I was 6'1", and was like, well, I know this is your first PT. And you're a moto grinder. We know, like, your moto handle. You won the moto PTQ to get here. Is it cool if you do an interview with us? And that was really cool. The interview is actually incredibly embarrassing. So if you really want to watch a cringe factor of a small ginger boy at his first Pro Tour, go to the end of round 7 at Pro Tour Amonkhet. And if you don't want to see me embarrass myself, don't do that. But yeah, BDM was pretty sweet to a lot of newcomers and old comers, I guess you could call it, alike.
I love it. So this past weekend, the whole big thing was Mythic Championship. Our boy Elliot called a shot. Didn't get there. I was really excited. He was really confident because they had announced more details about how to qualify for these Mythic Championships and how many points first place was going to get. Didn't get there, but Elliot, let's talk about your deck choice. Like, you on the last episode, you were off mono blue because you were losing a lot with it. You tested with Sultai. What did you end up with, and why?
So I actually did end up playing Sultai. I had some unfortunate flight issues on my way there. My flight was canceled, so I blindly trusted Sean Dollywall to register my deck. I said, I'll play whatever you want me to play. And I ended up landing and getting to our Airbnb after deck lists reduced, so he really saved my life there. We ended up playing Sultai that was very, very close to the list from the Grand Prix the previous weekend. We changed some sideboard cards with what we had expected the meta to adjust, and at the end of the day, even though my result wasn't that good, I'm really comfortable with the list we submitted, and I would, if I were to run it back, I wouldn't play mono blue or anything. I would just run back Sultai. Sean ended up going, I think, 10-6 or 9-7, mostly winning and constructed. Another guy that we tested with, Mike Van Valls, ended up 11-5ing to hit silver and queue for 2 Pro Tours, and he was a couple of cards off from what we registered. So, based on my my mental state last week on the show, and I was in the middle of my desperation testing, I ended up being really happy with the deck, and bit of unfortunate luck on the weekend, but I would definitely run it back. Going forward, I'm not 100% sure. It looks like some of the teamer decks are just beating up on Sultai, so that was a really sweet face-to-face team deck. So maybe that's something to look forward to.
What was that? One of the only surprises when it came to standard, Elliot?
At least in terms of like making a large splash, I think it was. Maybe people weren't expecting as much for the blue-red Drake decks to come back the way they did, but obviously LSV and Team Genesis, both those groups ended up playing different Crackling Drake decks, so maybe a bit more of that than people expected, but really just Team Face-to-Face taking that teamer Reclamation deck. I don't know how well Pascal ended up doing, but I know he was 5-0 on day one. I know that Edgar, I think 4-1 day one as well. So some really good finishes out of Team Face-to-Face with that deck. I've just been following along with people trying to make the final push into the top 8 of Mythic today. In a couple hours we have the cutoff, and I've seen Corey Baumeister play the deck. I've seen just so many people picking up this deck that Edgar and the rest of Team Face-to-Face kind of spearheaded into the format. I think it was originally built by Dom Harvey, who had a ton of SCG success. So I know they were really confident with it, and clearly people agree.
So it started with draft, right? And you had a rocky start to the day.
Yeah, so I got a message from my friends, a couple people wishing me good luck and hoping I open like all sorts of bombs. And I told them I'd be at my most comfortable if I was playing like a 15 land aggro deck. And at the end of the draft, I had a 16 land aggro deck. So I was Rakdos. I had some pretty good cards. I had 3 Blade Brands, which I think is like just one of the best cards you can have in Rakdos. Traditionally, these sort of aggressive creature decks in any draft format just get brickwalled by the time the green decks start playing their big creatures or other decks as well. And Blade Brand just, lets you bypass all of that, especially with Footlight Fiend. I also had a Judith the Scourge Diva in my deck, so I was looking to do some comboing. And I finished the draft 1-2, which is a little disappointing. I really thought I could 2-1 with the deck, but it just sort of flooded out at some inopportune times, had a couple mulligans, but I wasn't too unhappy. It's like the Pro Tour is hard at the end of the day. I would have liked to 2-1 or 3-0, but my pod was pretty good. I played against Ben Whites, and Reed Duke was also in my pod. So, not getting the 2-1 I wanted is a little upsetting, but I wasn't too discouraged. What really was beating me up is I was terribly sick. I sort of pulled the short straw on our Airbnb, and I was sleeping like right next to this industrial heater. So I woke up like 10 times in the middle of the night, and just all of day one,
oh god,
I have a migraine and my whole body is sore. So not to make excuses, but that's my excuse.
We had to talk. I wanted to pick your brain on your opinion on draft before you left last episode, because there were comments. I talked about how Robert Lombardi and David Rude mentioned how the enchantments are too strong. They wish there was some sort of naturalize. Do you feel that way after playing at the highest level, that the format's kind of unforgiving, or do you think there is some play there?
I think for sure the enchantments in this set are just way too strong relative to the disenchants that we have. Like the only really accessible one is the white common that I think Scry's one. But outside of that, if you're looking to destroy an enchantment, you have to have Sunder Shaman, which is really hard to cast uncommon, or the green rare that is just really bad and destroys all of them, makes 3/3s. So the fact that we're looking at a set with Ethereal Absolution at rare, which is an absolute bomb, even like the pacifism that's in blue-white is quite strong, Slime Bind is quite strong. Just the entire blue-white archetype sort of relies on this enchantment-based removal with the two I just mentioned. Ill-Gotten Inheritance is a card that like really sort of sucks. But the fact that it's just always going to deal 8+ damage because it's impossible to interact with just makes it, a card that put into any other format is embarrassing to play. Just makes it so strong. So I think that was definitely an oversight by Wizards not including at least one other disenchant in green or something like that. Just because, like, if you put Ethereal Absolution, in my opinion, in a set that has like good disenchants, it's not nearly as good as it is now. You play Ethereal Absolution in your deck, and it's just always going to live. You're always going to win the game. Same thing with Captive Audience. These enchantments are just like unbeatable, and there's no way to deal with them.
I caught a bit of the coverage for one of the first rounds. I saw Sigris win with a mill deck. Is that a common strategy in the format?
The blue-white like control mill deck is what I believe the best draft archetype possible. It's just so hard for any of the other decks to interact with because outside of specifically Clear the Mind or like their own copies of Clear the Mind or counter spells, there's no way to stop like the engine churning of just continually Clear the Minding yourself. You just have such powerful inevitability. And especially like the cards that go in this blue-white deck are just bad everywhere else. You have people drafting like all of the Walls of Lost Thought, all of the counter spells that mill 3. Outside of the blue-white removal spells, just nobody wants the cards you're playing. So you're going to get every single wall. You're going to get every single Clear the Mind. You only really need 2. And just the deck is just really easy to come together. I think Chillbringer's at its best there, and Simic kind of sucks, so you're going to get a lot of Chillbringers, and the deck's just incredibly powerful. The only problem is that it's sort of built in a way that it's going to get all the cards, but that leads to the deck not really being able to support 2 people. So I wouldn't really recommend like forcing it by any means. And it's definitely something that you have to be experienced with the format to end up in. I definitely didn't have. I was too big of a coward to try to draft that deck at the Pro Tour.
All right, Andy, let's go to you. You went down to Cleveland as well. What was your plan for the weekend?
My plan was just to play in the Saturday PTQ and the Sunday PTQ. So I guess I'll talk about them. So for the Saturday PTQ, played Modern. I played Izzet Phoenix, just almost exactly the same list I ran before, except with 2 main deck Surgicals and 1 Gut Shot as the free spells. And one thing I learned really fast is that Surgical is an awful card. It is so bad in the main deck. It's only good in the mirror, really, and against Dredge, and everything else, it's just atrocious. So I would certainly go back to playing just 1 main deck Surgical, if any. Would be the first change I make to the deck for sure. Holy crap, was it bad. And I ended up going 4-1 in the PTQ, but I lost the first round, so no hearts were broken in that one. And then for the second day, it was sealed, and then I kind of just looked up some things, tried to remember what all the practice I did for the sealed format. And then after the 6 rounds, I had only... So I went 3-2-1, I think. I think I drew the last round just to prize split and leave. And every single game I lost to an enchantment. Every single game. I lost to Theater of Horrors on turn 3 twice. I lost to double Ill-Gotten Inheritance into Ethereal Absolution twice. I lost to another Ethereal Absolution and the blue enchantment that can tap creatures and draw cards. I lost to that as well. Just every game I lost to an enchantment. And then I looked at my pool. my pool has 0 ways to kill an enchantment in every goddamn card in my pool. Every color, all of them. I was playing 5 colors in my deck, no, I was playing 4 colors in my deck. My deck was very good. I also had an Ethereal Absolution, and I had Mass Manipulation as well. I had a very good deck, but I just kept getting absolutely slaughtered by these enchantments, and then I had mine mortified a couple times. Just someone was lucky enough to open Mythic Rare Disenchant. So I really hate this format. I had a very bad time because it's just like, when facing down enchantments as powerful as these ones and having no answers to them other than like to board in some counter spells and hope you get under them, it's just so demoralizing to play against these things. So I had a very bad time.
All right. That's sad to hear. I think you thought the format was a little bad last week, but didn't hear. Now I hear like the pain in your voice, man. So.
Oh, I remember it all. It all came flushing back to me when my opponent played Ogre Inheritance on 4 and 5 and played no other creatures, and I was just like, wow, I'm dead. I'm stone dead. I'm dead. I can't race this. I can't beat this. I play a creature, they kill it, and it's like every removal spell is more like a lightning helix because like as the game goes on, I'm just going to get helixed again. So it was just so brutal.
Elliot, as someone that qualified for the Mythic Championship, how did it feel to have a Magic Fest on the same weekend? Good, bad idea? Your take?
So it was really sweet because I got to go next door and play the PTQ on Saturday after scrubbing out marvelously of day one. And I think it was actually just really sweet in general because there was just like so much going on. They ended up having like the Pro Tour or the Mythic Championship and the Magic Fest like in separate rooms but next door to each other. So like things didn't really mix so much on the Friday, but come Saturday and Sunday there were people kind of like streaming in between the two rooms, you know, checking in how their friends are doing in the Mythic Championship, going back to their round in whatever event they were playing. You had I think there were 46 people with 3 buys that played in the Grand Prix, sorry. And you know, I don't think all of them ended up playing. I know someone I know was paired against Reed Duke and handily slaughtered him in 10 minutes as Reed Duke went on to top 8 the Pro Tour. So not everyone showed up, but I think it was like a really great option where your weekend's kind of sunk if you don't day 2 the PT. Like, yeah, you can watch and it's a lot of fun, but that was sort of just even more amplified by the fact that you could go hang out with your friends that were coincidentally there for the Magic Fest, and still watch the Pro Tour and still be invested in the players that are there. So I think it really added a lot, and I know that it was, you know, just a ton of fun to be checking in on my friends that are coming back and watching Pro Tour coverage on the Sunday.
Right. That's sweet to hear.
I hated it.
You hated it?
I hated it. I had no clue what was going on in the Pro Tour the whole time as I'm in this other room. And I love Pro Tour coverage. It's so great to get to watch Pro Tour coverage when like the best of the best are commentating. You get to watch sweet players. You get to see a new, what everyone's playing in a standard format that it's really interesting. And I really want to see. You get to see what the pros are drafting and if they found an archetype that they think is perhaps one of the best, like they did with the blue-white Clear the Mind decks. But instead, I was just sitting in a PTQ that started at 3 p.m., a room over from all the things I like to do. I like to sit around at home and watch the Pro Tour all weekend, but instead I didn't get to do that. I basically knew nothing about the Pro Tour, and eventually I was like, oh, like I Autumn top 8'd, that's incredible, because I saw them come out just like crying and really happy about their intentional draw, and that was the first I knew of anyone doing anything. I didn't like it. I get the appeal. Maybe if they were in the same room where it was like more accessible, more like reasonable to like walk out there and not like miss your round because it was in a whole different room to like check it out. But as it was, I didn't see the value in it. I see the value for the players in the Pro Tour who don't day 2. Like, it's great for Elliot, no chance of day 2ing, gets to play in all these events at the Magic Festival. So like, I get for him, this is like all upside. Not for me though.
I imagine, Derek, for you, it's going to be awesome to have a Magic Fest. at what is it, London?
Yeah, I don't know. I might not even play it depending on the format. Might just go hang out in London. Like,
Oh,
the one thing, like, maybe I'm different than most people, but when I'm really excited to go to an event like the Pro Tour and I don't do well, I do not want to play Magic anymore. I do not want to touch a Magic card. I do not want to see a Magic card. I want nobody to talk to me about Magic for literal weeks. So, like, I might just never go back to, like, the event hall if I don't make day 2 and just go hang out at the Big Ben or something. See the Queen. What's up?
All right, so we won't be expecting you at the Magic Fest. Should you scrub out?
Oh, I'll be at the Magic Fest in the Pro Tour. I'll be at the Pro Tour of the Magic Fest. I'll definitely be making day 2. Don't you worry about that.
Okay, let's go back to Standard a little bit. Autumn Burchett ended up winning with Mono Blue. Of course, we've talked about on this show how the congratulations to her, of course, to them, of course, and we know, of course, on this show we talked about how the top 8 doesn't really represent the best decks in Standard moving forward. As Elliot has mentioned, some teamer that didn't even end up making the top 8, and a friend of the show, Shaheen, was was 16th with 3 rounds to go, and was almost able to make some noise if everything went their way. Unfortunately, he ended up losing the last 3 rounds, but he was playing his own brew. So were you, Derek, were you surprised to see Mono Blue take it down?
No, not at all, really. I think everything about the top 8 was something that was predictable. I didn't exactly predict it, but I wasn't surprised. I think maybe the biggest surprise was that LSV top 8 with Drakes, because I think that deck is one of the worst positioned decks in the format, although it is exceptionally good against Mono Blue. I don't necessarily think it's good against Sultai, which is the most represented deck there. Although I think he did 5-1 or 6-0 limited, so that might be why he made top 8. I think that Autumn is, if not, they are in the conversation for the best Mono Blue player. Like, I know Autumn won their PTQ with Mono Blue to qualify for the next PT anyways, I think it was, and had just been playing it a lot and know it. So I'm not surprised that they won with Mono Blue. I'm not surprised that they were crushing people with Mono Blue in the mirror and in the rest of the field. That's what we should expect at a Pro Tour, right? Good players playing good decks well. I don't know if that means Mono Blue's the best deck. I think everybody sort of knows that it's a good deck now. I think it definitely still has some inherent flaws in the way it's built. It was compared to Delver quite a bit, but it is nowhere near the same power level, I think, but still on the same, like, maybe relative to the format. It may be. I don't know how you quantify that really, but I do think the deck is good, and I think that has a lot of play to it. So yeah, not surprised. Pretty happy with the result. Felt like it was a good Pro Tour.
Yeah, Autumn, multiple back-to-back national champion, back-to-back English national champion, Platinum Pro, first ever Mythic champion. And when you were watching them play, you just felt like they were playing really, really solid. And on Twitter, you had nothing but compliments on basically the level of skill that was displayed throughout the top 8. Seemed to be overall lots of. There
was one specific play I think I remember. I think it was the finals where it's Ichikawa is the opponent, right, in the finals. Ichikawa has like a Lyra in hand, and they thought erasure Autumn and see, I think it's Essence Capture Disdainful Stroke along one of the two, and a couple turns later cast Lyra, and Autumn Disdainful Strokes it instead of Essence captures it, because Autumn decided that they couldn't beat Thief of Sanity. But if they read Ichikawa wrong, and Ichikawa has a Teferi, the entire pace of the game changes. So the in-depth thinking that had to go on in the finals in that specific like 3 or 4 turn sequence for that to happen is so immense, right? Most people, even at the pro level, aren't going to make that, let alone people below that level. I think like that really showed how well Autumn knew the intricacies of the Elliot's telling me that Autumn drew negate. I didn't get that, but I don't know. Somebody explained it to me that they made like this choice that would inherently seem incorrect, but I guess they drew negate. Never mind. If that's what happened. Now I look stupid, but
I mean, Autumn still played incredibly that game 5. A lot of people point to things like Ross Merriam versus Patrick Sullivan, where if you want to learn Legacy Burn or just burn in any format, you have to watch that game. And this is absolutely the case for game 5 of the finals here, where if you want to play Mono Blue or you want to beat Mono Blue, you have to watch game 5 of the finals because it was so masterfully played by Autumn. We were in the spectator area at the Pro Tour, watching on the little screen they have, and I think we looked at Autumn's opening 7, and we were like, this is the nuts. How can they lose? It was like Siren Storm Tamer plus a Curious Obsession, that a Spell Pierce, and more counter magic up the chain. And we thought that was it. The Pro Tour is obviously over because they're going to finish. Just roll them. And then they didn't play the Curious Obsession until turn 4. And our mind was blown every turn that passed without them casting it, because it seems so obvious to just Curious Obsession your creature when you have a Spell Pierce up. How do you lose from that scenario? But they realized that if their opponent just plays a Thief of Sanity, then they're trading off their Terra Mana in a really bad spot. And so they just held up Essence Capture forever. And they just finally got to a point where they're happy to play their Curious Obsession, having passed on drawing like 3 cards. And Yoshiro Ikawa, I think is his name, had a Thief of Sanity, and the game just plays out totally differently, and Autumn probably loses if they make the default play of casting Curious Obsession. It was just, between, I think, game 3 and game 5, just incredibly well played Magic. I haven't got a chance to see their series against Reed Duke, but I've heard that was incredible as well. So definitely, if you're looking to play Mono Blue, watch the top 8 matches that Autumn played.
They, in the interview with BDM, and they were interviewed by BDM each of the days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I think Autumn talked about how lots of games were played with that deck. So lots of experience were behind those plays. Okay, a topic, speaking of the top 8 was actually loaded with names that we recognize. We had Reed Duke, who some were cheering for to win his first Pro Tour. We had LSV back, yet another Pro Tour top 8. Friend of the show, Alex Magilton, made it. Marcio Carvalho also made top 8. And then Spencer Howland, friend of the show, wanted us to talk about this. And it was a small debate. Andy and me are used to it because we listen to First Take all the time, all the GOAT conversations that seem to dominate. Is Michael Jordan better than LeBron James, etc.? At what point does LSV surpass Kai and John? What's your take, Andy?
What's my take? Well, it's our job to cover this, remember. It's our job to say who's the greatest of all time. And I would say, so it's so hard because I never watched Kai play, so that I'm just going to be so full of recency bias, it's just going to be outlandish. It's like, I feel the same way like with like LeBron versus Jordan. It's like I always want to say Jordan LeBron and think it's not close. But then again, I didn't watch like Michael Jordan just like win 6 rings, which is just obscene. And I'm not sure he could do it in this era. And so this thing is like, do I think Kai could win 8 Pro Tours in this era? Not a chance. There's no way he could win 8 Pro Tours in this era. But at the same time, that doesn't diminish what he was. Like, maybe is the greatest of all time the best player ever, like the best mind ever, or are they like the best above everyone else in their era? Is like that what makes someone the greatest? Because even though the players are all better now, he also didn't have a lot of the tools that everyone else has. Like, people are supposed to get better over time at things. And it's only natural that, like, as time goes on, the next person up is going to be better than the people before. So, like, do I think Kai was that much better than everyone else in his era? He was probably more better than everyone in his era than anyone is in the current era. But I think that there's the players now just should be better than Kai. Like, the best of the best now should be better than Kai. So I think LSV is probably better than Kai was, but I'm not sure. There's like the gap between Kai and everyone else is not like the gap between LSV and everyone else. So it depends what you think of the greatest of all time.
Dude, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. Kai is like, it goes like Kai, small margin, Finkel, pretty big margin, like LSV, Nassif, and they're like in the same realm. And then you could probably put Paulo, PV directly out. Like, I would say like maybe switch Nassif and PV.
Wait till you hear Elliot's top 5.
Man, like, if you don't put Kai as number 1, you're insane. It's just like it's not generally close yet. Like, Kai won 7 Pro Tours out of the 10 he's top 8'd. 2 of them were in a row. Like, LSV has 10 top 8s and has only won, what, 2? Like, you're telling me.
Shots fired there.
The thing is, you can argue that, like, your record in top 8s is like a super small sample. Like, I understand, like, I still think it is a strong argument for Kai, his record in top 8s. But, like, the fact that, like, a couple top 8s swing differently, or a couple matchups in top 8 swing differently, and we have a complete different history.
Man,
I don't like to just write it on that.
It's like, it's not even that, like, play skill was different. It's the idea of information was different. The internet didn't exist the way it does now. So, like, when we look at these top 8s, all of these deck lists are relative to what is known information. They have these super groups that are testing. If you go back to when Kai was winning these Pro Tours, I have it here in front of me, Chicago 2000 to 2001 and Barcelona 2000 to 2001, they were making their own deck lists. These guys are from Germany or Europe. They didn't have these big stores like the United States did, like in New York, where they were basically harboring the Pro Tour. Like, it's just a completely different atmosphere, and we just have no idea. I've talked with Rude multiple times about this, and he just says, like, people who think that Kai is number 1 are insane, because he was so dominant on the Pro Tour during that, like, 7-year period that it would not be close. Even if you, like, have LSV, who has, like, a longer career, it's Kai just was hitting so much in such a small period of time that if he, like, focused and stayed on the game, he would just be, like, blowing everybody else away still.
I feel like we're hitting on the same thing I was talking about, like, with eras being different. Like, it's not that fair to compare people, because, like, even Kai, as Kai was then now, if he was just as talented and just as smart, like now, not that I'm saying he isn't, but now he's not going to win as much as he did before. Just like Michael Jordan could never win 6 rings, like with, like, against, like, for example, if you look at LeBron is facing the best team of all time in basketball. And is it fair to diminish, like, from him as an individual? And that's one of the big arguments, because he's facing the best team of all time. I think the eras are so different. Like, Kai was so far above everyone else at that time period that he, like, appeared to be so incredibly dominant, and he was incredibly dominant. But I'm not sure that, all things being equal, that's why it's so hard to compare, and that's why these debates are so interesting, is because you can't possibly know.
I just think, like, even if we can't quantify it, if you just look at strict numbers, Kai is ahead. And then if you talk to people who were playing during that era, like Kai's just absolute dominance. Like they were breaking the mold. And you don't hear that about many players anymore. You don't hear, especially in a non-information age, like it's so different that these guys were just hitting the mark over and over and over again when there wasn't the same sort of flow of knowledge as there is now. To me, that's what really puts Kai ahead of everybody else, was he was breaking the game when nobody else could.
Yeah, but now everyone has this same flow of knowledge. Now LSV has all this same flow of knowledge, and every competitor he plays at the Pro Tour is playing a good deck. Like not all of them, but enormous margin of them are just playing very good decks and have like all these sideboard guides from pros and stuff like that. That his competition is much better. It's just like you can't compare Wayne Gretzky to Sidney Crosby because goalies didn't do the butterfly back then, so you can't. All the data is useless.
But to be fair, LSV doesn't have like a dominance. LSV is good, and I think that LSV is obviously very, very good. That's not what we're arguing. But I think like the difference between like the way Kai just had controlled the Pro Tour is so different if skill level's relative, right? So to me, it's like the gap for Kai back then and the average player is like so drastically high that I don't even think LSV is that drastically different, right? Like it's just like it's close.
We totally agree on this, and this is one of my major points on why it's like super hard to compare and why perhaps like you could argue against Kai for these kind of things. I understand like the gap is so high, that's why he was so dominant. Do I think Kai versus average player is more? He was more dominant then, absolutely, without a doubt. But I think I think as a player, I think that these players could be better. As time goes on, people are supposed to get better. It just makes sense. People understand game theory more. People understand everything more.
I think like I agree with you in theory that's supposed to work, but also the way Magic was played slightly after Kai like started dropping off was like a lot of people left the game to go play poker, to go like I think Kai worked at it's that sports betting company that a lot of like I think Cheon worked there too. He stopped playing Magic for a bit and came back and like hasn't really done anything since. I think that's why a lot of people like don't notice who Kai is or don't really understand like what he's about because he took that long break, right? He's not playing as much. I think LSV took a different approach to Magic and just didn't stop playing. But like for him to have 10 top 8s over that period of time, if he's the GOAT, he should have more. And I think it's just still insane to not put Kai at number 1 and Finkel at number 2. Just because, like, to me, they're just far and away. Like, those are set in stone. Like, maybe the Nassif, LSV, Paulo argument is close. But I think those two are number 1 and 2 for sure.
Yeah, I feel like what's happening is that you're like, which is a totally reasonable way to argue it, is you're stuck in the, like, comparing them in their era. And I'm trying to like work around that, which is obviously way more hypothetical and like less solid. Do I think Kai was better in his era compared to even the second best, third best, fourth best than LSV? Of course. It's not even close. So like you could argue that for all those reasons, then yeah, he should be the best of all time. But I just think that it's possible that he's not, based because of the average player being so much better and the competition being so much better and the LSV and Finkel still dominating despite.
I think that it's so hard to quantify how good the average player is, and how like what the actual gap is. That you sort of have to eliminate that, or like take it as like a very relative rate where like they're almost comparative. With the information age and the non-information age. And to me, like just looking at the numbers is really what sells it for me. Like obviously Kai hasn't had a top 8 in 12 years or something. Pro Tour Amsterdam.
You could also argue that like if Kai peaked in the information age, would he still be as dominant? That's something you'd like to know. Like that's what I think of like when I think of like old athletes who like didn't have the nutrition, the fitness like that LeBron does, where like he tracks every single thing he does. And that's why he's like an athletic freak of nature at 34 years old. If other people were able to do that kind of thing, would they be even better than him? And I wish we could know.
Right. I don't know. I still just think it's insane not to put Kai first. I think that if Kai really wanted to, he could definitely still top 8 a Pro Tour. I don't think he's trying though. Finkel still does it every once in a while, but Finkel's obviously still very good and also just doesn't try very hard. I think LSV's trying and is having results, but he needs a couple more top 8s, maybe another win or two to make me think that he's close to number 1 or 2. He's definitely third. I think Paulo's up there too. I think they're very close.
I didn't know that it would be such a sweet topic. We're going to get to Elliot top 5. I just feel, it's kind of hard. It's like the argument is making me think of, is Kai Michael Jordan? Like how the arguments, Andy, that we listened to, it's like it never needed a game 7, man. He just always won, and that's how dominant he was. What's your controversial top 5, Elliot?
Look, I'll just come out and say it. We're all thinking it. I've never seen LeBron beat the Monstars. Michael Jordan's obviously number 1.
That was like a good part of my childhood. I remember my 2 favorite movies when I was a kid was Space Jam and The Mighty Ducks D2.
But in all seriousness, we were actually talking about this like an hour before we went live, just like Andy and a group of friends and I. Like Kai's not in my top 3. Number 1 is like a toss-up between LSV and Finkel, and it's like so close that I kind of don't want to get into it, but I think that LSV is maybe edging him out. And then number 3 is PV, number 4 is Finkel, and number 5 is Nassif. And I'm pretty sure on number 3, 4, and 5 there, because like what Derek just described of if LSV gets another top 8 or 2 and maybe another win, that's just PV's career. PV has 12 top 8s and 2 wins. That's LSV's career plus 2 top 8s plus a win. So I don't know how you can make the distinction of LSV's not even close to Kai unless you add on these statistics when there's a player out there that has those statistics.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Paul is probably better than LSV then.
I think that all of the points that Derek made about Kai dominating outside of the information era as a benefit to Kai is actually a detriment. Because my understanding, and I could be off base about this, but from what I've read of people talking that played during that era, is that Kai's era was right in between when Finkel stopped playing and when teams like Channel Fireball, like the super team kind of idea cropped up. And what I've been told and what I've read is that Kai and the German team were actually just the first super team. They were the ones that met up for weeks before Pro Tours, testing the format, getting every single deck, playing everything, and tuning decks. And that's why they were going into Pro Tours with these huge deck advantages. They were showing up and just mopping the floor with people who didn't have the information, who were playing against people just at their local store and didn't know everything that could be done in the format. And obviously, Kai is still exceptional given this, because there's a reason his teammates weren't winning all the Pro Tours and he was. So obviously Kai is a fantastic player, and I think that you're doing yourself like sort of a great disservice to think that placing him at number 4 all time means that you're poo-pooing on his career, because obviously it's still fantastic. It's beyond expectation to win as many Pro Tours as he did in such a short amount of time. And I think that it's really telling that You know, we saw Finkel top 8 a Pro Tour a couple years ago. We see him doing consistently well. We saw LSV top 8 3 Pro Tours in a row a few years ago, and he's still doing really well. He top 8 2 in a row again. And I think that, you know, we're not seeing the same level of dominance that Kai had then now, but, you know, you could make an argument for Finkel winning like back-to-back Pro Tours that had a couple hundred players or just over 100 players to LSV top 8ing back-to-back 500-player Pro Tours as similar levels of dominance. And I mean, that's what I think is the case for LSV being the best player of all time. You know, whether he's better than or tied with Finkel, I think it's very close. I think Finkel's proven to have the longevity of his career, specifically when Magic is sort of on the back burner for him. That to me means he could still be the best of all time, the greatest of all time. But for the same reason that people sort of discredit people like PV and LSV to recency bias, which I think is fair. Recency bias is definitely something that exists. People are sort of have like a nostalgia bias of, oh, well, they can't be better than Kai because Kai was crushing everyone years and years and years ago. And Kai was way better than everyone back then. And it's not really fair to have LSV be ahead of him now. But really, you're just doing yourself a disservice on both sides about recency bias and sort of like nostalgia bias. I think that, you know, all these players are very, very good. And I think that Finkel's just, or sorry, that Kai's just a little worse than LSV, PV, and Finkel.
But like what you said about Kai was one of the points I made, was they were revolutionizing the way people were playing Pro Tours, and which is why they were so dominant, which is why I think that he's like the gap between him and your average player. Like so many people learned from him. So many people learned from their team dominating the game. If it wasn't for them, it's arguable that the game could have continued without this sort of super team information age. They attacked the game differently than had been seen before outside of the box, and they were making results. So not only were they hitting the mark with these deck lists and planning better and playing better, they were winning still. So like, to me, that's just so, you don't see that anymore. You won't see that again, probably. You won't see people win back-to-back Pro Tours, or you won't see people top 8 a million Pro Tours in a row, other than like LSV, who's already in the conversation. You know what I mean? Like Kai and his team during this period were just so far and away better than everybody else that it's almost insulting to not say that they're the best, right? Because they broke the game. They revolutionized the way we play Magic.
See, I'm sort of approaching it from the other side of the spectrum, where the fact that they had such an information advantage over his opponents is not necessarily a detractor from him. Obviously, it's a great achievement for him to have, you know, deduced this way to get the advantage, right? To have figured out that, hey guys, if we meet up and just play everything, we're going to be able to crush people. And, you know, the fact that it went on for 4 or 5 years and he was still having amazing results shows that, you know, maybe either people didn't catch on or he was just the best at it. But I think that if you were like a time traveler and had just the best deck at all of these Pro Tours 15 years ago, you would have exceptional results, even if you're sort of a middling player now. And I think that that's not true of any of the recent Pro Tours. I think that, you know, we look back to like formats that are a little more solved. You know, you look at Pro Tour Fate Reforged that was modern, and how that was like the coming out of Amulet Bloom. Justin Cohen top 8 of the Pro Tour, and Sam Black had an amazing result with Amulet Bloom at that Pro Tour. And the deck was iterated on for a few months after that before eventually getting banned. And I think if you take like the final permutation of Amulet Bloom before it got banned and show up to that Pro Tour, you have no guarantees. And the same thing could be said for any of the standard formats where the Pro Tour was still relatively early in the format. You look at Steve Rubin, who won with green-white tokens. That deck changed dramatically from when he won the Pro Tour to the end of the format when it rotated, and was consistently the best deck during that format. But taking the final iteration of the deck, or even, you know, the most tuned version, if you think that at a certain point it becomes like inbred based on the evolution of the meta, and take it to that Pro Tour, you don't have a huge edge. And it's just, you could take Autumn Burchett's winning deck again. You don't have a huge edge in the meta this time. And just point after point, it happens where the Pro Tour is just, even though the decks are so iterated on, you don't get a huge advantage over having this deck that's just a little bit more tuned than everyone. Versus then, you could take Kai's winning deck and probably have a good result. You could take Kai's winning deck, iterated on through the rest of the format, and have a very good result. And I don't think that's the case now. And I think that the fact that they had all this extra information is both a point to Kai for getting it, and also a detractor where, he's not that much better at playing the game than everyone compared to people like LSV and Finkel.
But like, it's not like they just stumbled across this information. They put in time, they put in effort, they put in, like, the reason why this is so amazing, and you're talking about not getting edges, and the reason you don't get edges is because people aren't putting in the time and the effort. These guys were deciding that I wanted to be good. I wanted to win these events, and they were, and that, like, that's what I mean. Like, it's such a huge difference in gap in skill and in those old ages and the ages now, that, like, for you to just say that there's no information, these guys were just harvesting their own information first, that's a negative, because it made such a large gap. It's like, how can that be a negative when that was the reason they were winning? They decided that they wanted to be the best, and they were, and they showed it. Nobody else was putting in the time, nobody else was putting in the effort. And it's not like everybody was accidentally bad at Magic. It's just these guys were figuring out the way to be the best consistently.
So, I mean, if that's the case where you're giving extra points for just discovering all of this information, then, where's his teammates, like, in the Phoenix Foundation? Where are they in your top 10? Are these, like, players that haven't had necessarily stellar careers, necessarily don't have Hall of Fame careers? Like, are his testing partners, like, also in the discussion for top 10 of all time, even though they have?
This is why Kai is. This is why
I understand that, but, like, I think that you're, like, dissociating greatest of all time and fourth best of all time as, like, a huge gap where the fourth best of all time is, like, peanuts compared to LSV or Finkel or someone who's the best of all time.
No, I just think that, like, for you to look at 10 Pro Tour top 8, 7 wins in such a short period of time, and say it's fourth best is a little insulting. And, like, PV has 12 top 8s, 2 wins. LSV has 10 top 8, 1 win, I think. And to me, like, that's still just not close to the same over twice as much time, I guess. Like, I think it's very obvious that Kai is number 1 and Finkel's number 2, and then, like, Paulo and LSV are 3. Just because, like, Kai was breaking the mold, and nobody's caught up to him really in since he's been doing it, and that's why he's still number 1.
Do you think that wins actually matters?
I think.
Or do you think that a top 8 is, like, significantly worth less than a win?
I think on average, your top 8, like, the 3 rounds in top 8, are the most difficult round you'll play in the entire event. And
so, like last Pro Tour, LSV mulched the 4 in the finals game 5. So that's just, like, a wash for him. Like, the top 8 doesn't really matter because he didn't win.
I mean, him winning and him coming second is, like, marginal, right? But
so how many second place finishes does LSV have?
I don't know, but he didn't win, is what I'm saying.
So, like, a win versus second place is marginal. He
didn't
win, so the second place doesn't matter. I'm just saying that the top 8 is a top 8. You play
it's not, man.
16 rounds of a tournament, and you reach the top 8, and then, like,
earlier,
getting unlucky in one match.
How Autumn played great all through top 8, Not that her opponent or their opponents definitely played worse, but Autumn played great. And LSV got lucky to top 8 those events. And if you just throw a variance thing in there and just say, oh, there's variance in Magic, the difference between first and second doesn't matter. Well, it does matter because variance is the same across all stages. It's the same for everybody, right? So it's not like you can just say LSV got unlucky and lost the finals. Sure, like that's marginal, but like variance is the same. Like maybe Kai got lucky and won a finals. Maybe Kai got lucky and lost the finals, whatever, right? The margins are the same, but it's not like 6-7 or even 5-7. It's 1-7, and they have the same amount of top 8s. And Kai won 2 back to back, man. Like the difference is astronomical. Even if you say like, even if you give LSV the last one, it's still only 2 out of 10.
So Kai winning like 6 more matches than LSV makes him head above him, best player in the world.
Yeah, 6 more matches. Okay. If you have 6 more match wins at your first PT, it's arguable that you just like top 8 a PT, right?
It's 6 matches across 50 Pro Tours.
It's insane to me that you think that those are the same thing, and they're just not. They're not comparable.
All right, we're gonna move on. This is a great topic, and I'm sure we will revisit it at the next big top 8, next Mythic Championship, or any other further ones. Right now we are in the final hours of the whole Mythic top 8 run here. We have some of our friends buying from some spots, and we have people updating on Twitter. We have Andre Strasky, who said, I think he tweeted that he was number 4 at one point. Our man Daniel Fournier says, oh, just tweeted 12 minutes ago, I've never had less fun playing Magic than I have right now, trying to play for this ladder top 8. Please never do this to us again. I think when we heard the announcement, we knew, and that's why I guess all of us, and especially Derek, has decided not to grind for that spot because of how hard it is, how just insane it is for you have to not only get there but maintain. I mean, just a few days ago, Fournier was 20th, 17th. Can't imagine what he is now. I think Alex, when I was watching him stream, he was like Alex Hayne, 200 and something. My other friend streamer, Travis Sauer, Semulin, he was number 140, and he decided today to stream with no chat because he wanted to focus all his energy to try to make it the top 8. I don't think, I mean, it's going to be hard for anyone to get there and keep their spot. And I guess conclusion is that they probably shouldn't ever do this again. Those are your thoughts, Derek?
Yeah, they did this with Hearthstone, right? It's stupid, and like you said, I just decided I don't want to do it. It's weird because like people are chasing internet clout to try to achieve this. I saw people like posting at number 50, people posting at like below 50. Like, should I grind today? It's like, if you weren't going to grind before, you're not going to make it. Strotsky was at 4. Fournier was at 17. If you lose one of those, you go to like 30th, and you have to win like some unreal number, like 15 matches to get back to where you were, right? Just because like it's so tight, it's just like not worth it. You can't sit down and focus and avoid variance for that amount of time and not go a little insane. Like, and I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I actually think it will have a negative effect on your mental health if you try to like do that for so long, and like the setbacks will have such a bad effect on you that I just don't think it's worth it. Obviously Wizards won't like, it's hard to value it like that, you know. They're just trying to get people to play, trying to show streamers grinding for these top 8. So I don't know. As far as we know, this event that is qualifying for, we don't know a lot about it still. We don't know how many there's going to be more, if there I don't know if they announced that there were going to be more. We don't know exactly how the Mythic points work yet or whatever, right? So to me, I don't know. I don't know if they'll keep doing it. I don't know if they'll find a better way to do it. I think they announced that they're going to like have a PTQ style event for top 1,000 Mythic.
Yeah, I think that's their new thing. So if you're top 1,000 Mythic, you get to play in this like Mythic weekend event or something like that, where it's a 2-day event. Where the first day, I think you just play to 7 wins or 3 losses, whatever happens first. And if you get to 7 wins, you get to play in the second day. And then after that day, the top 16 all get to go to the Arena Mythic Championship, which is worth a lot of money per seat.
Yeah. As somebody who's qualified for the mocks, that seat is worth a little bit more than my mocks invite, I think. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of frustrating because you just want to tell people don't do it because like obviously it's not good, but then you're not going to stop people from doing it, right? So I don't know. I look forward to next season. I don't know when it starts. It starts in March, or if anybody knows, I don't know.
Yeah, it does start in March, yeah.
So like top 100 gets invited.
1,000.
Top 1,000, sorry, gets invited in April?
Yep, I think so.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll Google this.
Yeah, I agree with you though on like the top 8 thing just being really a toxic thing. Like you can get so upset with yourself, but like feel like you have to keep going, and then you're just like you just start feeling sad. You're just like you lose 3 matches in a row, and all of a sudden you're like 4 hours away from getting back to where you were. And it is demoralizing, and I couldn't imagine doing it. I wouldn't even consider doing it. Even if I had all the free time in the world, I'm not sure I would do it because of like recommendations from friends being like it is bad for your mental health. There are other people who are going to try harder, play more, and that kind of and that are probably better than you, and it's just not it can't be worth the time invested.
I was playing last season. I think I got up to Mythic 3 in like must have been like the 3rd week of January or something. And I saw Bolov Zero. I can't remember his real name.
Tiago Saporito?
Yeah, he was first. And he tweeted. And then, so I get paired against him and I lose and I stay at 3. I get paired against somebody else. And this is before they had their number on the screen. And I lost. And I went to 7th. I lost again. I went to 15th. I lost again. I went to 55 or something. And it was like, wow, this is not worth it. And then I'm like, okay, like let's try to get top 10. I win a couple, get to like 28th, lose. I was at like 70. It's like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. And then I stopped playing. And in the like week that I stopped playing, I somehow jumped outside of top 1,000 in Mythic because I got the email and it said you were in like the 99th percent. And I was like, okay, there's no way that I'm going to grind this month because you just can't do it. It's not possible. I mean, 8 people, it's possible, but it might be a little random.
Yeah, and the announcements, like I don't even know what to make of them yet. I mean, there's a lot. I'm thinking about because they talked about how old style, we mentioned old style PTQs might be back, and we had talked with in our chat with Jonathan Zhang and how he never experienced old style PTQs, and we talked about how brutal they are because it's basically winner takes all. Especially if in the past some stores or some organizers just had pretty crappy prize pool, and it was the case for PPTQs as well. Some stores just had really bad prize pool, and all you wanted was a spot at the PT or the RPTQ. And on the plus side, I have fond memories of these being events. I mean, only reason I know Derek. Only reason I know Andy is because of the PTQ grind at the time. So I don't know. I don't know if I don't know what to think of it. And the same reason why I like nationals, just because it was a place to meet people, but I can see why they decided to take that away. But for now, I don't even know what my, like, if I were to decide to grind back, I don't even know what my best path would be. Like, Derek, for you, like to continually get onto PT, what's your path?
Maybe spike a couple more PTQs, try to do well at the Pro Tour. I don't know. I don't know. Like before, like you could probably get lucky at a Grand Prix or something. Maybe pick up some points here or there. Like Edgar stumbled into gold, sort of, and so did Morgan. Like obviously they were trying, but I remember Edgar won a Moto PTQ, and then top 8 at a Grand Prix, and then strung a couple PT invites, and then won a Grand Prix. And it's like it's just sort of happened, right? Most people just aren't like, okay, I need 3 points here, 3 points here. At this PT, I have to get 5 points. You know, it's not like a plan. You just go to these events and hope to do well. So, like, I'm going to keep playing these high-level events because that's what I like to do. But the plan is never to really, I need to hit this Pro Tour. I need to string these together to do well, right? It's sort of like, well, if it happens, it happens. I'm here anyways.
Andy, is the best play just to play PTQs at these Magic Fests?
I actually think if your goal is to like just qualify for the Pro Tour, it's probably just not close. Just play the PTQs. I genuinely think so. I think like top 8ing a GP is hard. I've certainly never done it, and I've won like 2 old style PTQ-esque type things, or I guess only won a WMCQ. And I won like the Sunday Super Series, which is like a large, basically it was a PTQ. And those, they seem simpler, especially when like the recipe is just pretty simple at GPs. You just go 5-0, you top 8, you got 3 more to go. 8-0 go.
I actually had this conversation with Rob before he won his GP, because we were talking about, because they had moved from the old school PTQs to the pre-TQ RPTQ style. And we basically thought that to win a pre-TQ was probably pretty easy, but to spike like an 8-round, 7-round event, sometimes you just get variant stout. You don't always have time to grind these things. You might just not always make it. And then the RPTQ you go to are just going to be full of good players. So it's probably pretty difficult to do. We decided that it might actually be easier to top 8 a Grand Prix on average than to win an RPTQ. And then he went and won a Grand Prix. So like I'm under the belief that top 8ing a Grand Prix is easy. And I actually think that like it's that or spike a PTQ at the Sunday thing is probably the easiest way to do it. Especially since like less good players are playing Grand Prix now, right? Like you could probably spike a local Grand Prix pretty easily. A lot of people have done that. Because that's how they qualify. Not many people are like spiking PTQs, you know, like people who are winning PTQs are normally like PTQ grinders. They're not just randos who entered, or you know what I mean? So
right, I think that does it for the show this week. And there's a lot of events this upcoming weekend for that Face-to-Face is part of. There's the FaceToFaceGames.com Charlottetown Open. I think it's our very first tournament in Prince Edward Island. So always good to go to these places, even though we don't expect attendance to be as insane as Toronto or Alberta, but our goal is to help grow Magic, help competitive Magic have life in every part of Canada. So it's gonna be exciting to go there, and if we get over 100 people, I'll be ecstatic. And then of course there's Magic Fest, I believe LA, this upcoming weekend. So tons of Magic to look forward to, and yeah, support the show, like, subscribe. Download us on your favorite podcast app. support us via Patreon at patreon.com/firststrike. And yeah, sooner or later, we'll probably be rolling out some guides for some of the new standard decks. If you have any requests, of course, let us know. And you know, John is still in the lab trying to break some spicy brews. Actually, he's shown me some deck lists, and we'll see if those actually pan out to be anything. Any last words from you guys before we go? Nope. Okay, we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.